Hey guys, welcome to my review of the MSI Optix gaming monitor. Today we're going to go over the basics like the specs, and then we're going to get into the real questions like should you buy one? Am I happy I bought one? And the real question, is it worth it? All that soon to come, but first let's roll the intro. So first, let's start off with the basics. It's a 1440p ultra-wide monitor that's 21:9 aspect ratio. It's 34 inches and has a 1 millisecond response time and 144 Hz refresh rate. Those are all pretty strong specs, but another fun fact about it is that it's curved, with a $1,500 curve, which basically is just the determination of how curved the monitor is. So this monitor can cover around 93% of the DCI P3 color space and over 110% of the sRGB color space. It does this through an 8-bit panel with FRC. Speaking of the panel, it's a VA panel with around 300 nits of brightness and a 4,000:1 contrast ratio. So colors should be pretty punchy and it should be somewhat bright. Now that's the basics, but let's move on to the fun features. This monitor does have RGB lighting on the back. It actually flashes up against the wall in a ring around where the monitor stand normally goes, which is really nice, and unfortunately it's not integrated with USB or anything like that, so you can't sync it up with the computer, but it is still a nice feature to have, and there's a fair amount of options in the built-in menu. Speaking of which, unfortunately this is not a joystick-based menu, it actually is a series of 5 buttons along the bottom, which is just less intuitive, but still works fairly well. And at the price this monitor comes in at, it's okay that they cut a little bit of cost. Speaking of that, they didn't cheap out on excluding a VESA mount, so you can mount this on a monitor arm like I have mounted here, and it's actually pretty easy to do. Moving on to the physical aspects of this monitor, it comes with a stand that's actually pretty ergonomic and easy to use. I've chosen to mount mine on an arm just for convenience sake to give me more desk space, but the built-in stand is perfectly adequate. It also has relatively thin bezels and a nice aesthetic, so you shouldn't be too disappointed. Now let's get into the really important part, the experience. One thing that ultrawides have always done a really great job with is immersiveness, and this monitor is no different. The curve does add to this, however I wouldn't say it's that big of a change from a flat monitor. I recently just transitioned up from a 32-inch flat screen monitor to the 32-inch ultrawide curved monitor. And I'm not going to say it made a huge difference, but it is definitely a cool thing if you wanted to put two of them side by side, for instance. Another thing that this monitor is great for is not only immersive gaming, but also esports and high refresh rate titles. You can run the full 1440p ultra-wide gaming experience if you have a computer powerful enough to run it, and I actually do. It's a pretty great experience, I'm not gonna lie. But even if you wanted to just stick to more competitive esports titles like Valorant or CSGO or something of that nature, you definitely could also run that and have no problems on a more modest PC. Ultra-wide monitors don't only shine with gaming though, they're also a really great use for productivity. It's almost like having 2 screens in one, and with the Windows Snap, it's pretty easy. You can get utilities that will allow you to snap 3 windows vertically so that you can have 3 of them all positioned side by side. But even without this, it is still a great usability feature, and especially if you work a lot in spreadsheets or anything like that, it is an incredible boost to productivity. One of the downsides that this monitor does have though, is that the power supply is external, which is a bit harder to cable manage, and it's just not as elegant of a solution. But it's not that bad. The included cord is actually pretty easy to use. One thing I will note about this monitor though is that it does have HDR listed on its spec sheet, and it is more than capable of taking in an HDR input. However, with only 300 nits of peak brightness, it doesn't really give the true HDR experience. So now that we've gone over the specs and kind of talked about how it is to use, let's get into the conclusion. Should you actually buy one? I think it depends on who you are. If you've already got a pretty decent gaming monitor and you're just looking to transition up to ultra-wide gaming and you have a PC that can run it, I definitely think it's worth the buy. However, if you only really use your PC occasionally and you're just interested in a normal day-to-day monitor, I think you should definitely step down to the 100Hz version of this monitor. It's a substantial price change and it allows you to save a fair bit of money without actually sacrificing that much performance. I chose the 144Hz version because it was in my budget and I'm definitely happy with it. I think that the 100Hz version would also be a very good choice for most people. Keep in mind also that if you planned on gaming at the full resolution at the full frame rate, you will need a fairly expensive computer to run it, and with graphics card shortages the way they are today, I definitely think that you should look into that first before buying one. But overall, it is a really great product and it's incredible value for what it is. You can save more money if you choose to, but I think this experience itself is definitely worth the price they're charging for it. Thank you again for watching, and please feel free to like and subscribe afterwards. I'm trying to get to 250 subscribers currently, and I think that this would make a huge help if you could add to it. Thank you again, and feel free to maybe check out one of my other videos while you're here.